So Frank's got something very interesting today. It's the 3 rules all small business owners should live by when running their companies. Frank, what's the first one?
Thank you. The first rule is read the document.
That sounds so simple, doesn't it?
It does sound simple. And it is simple, but then again not. Because it's the last thing an entrepreneur wants to do is sit down, quietly read, actively read, underline, comment, mark up a document when they're reading it. But inevitably what happens is they're satisfied with the executive summary that whoever handed them the document says, well, here's what it says. And the person who handed the document, you have varying degrees of credibility on the source of that information. And I can't tell you how often I've sat in my office and had an entrepreneur come in and say, hey, I signed this thing 6 months ago. Here's what they told me it said. Can you take a look at it? Here's what I want to do, but I don't think I can. And inevitably, of course, they cannot.
The key words were, I signed this thing 6 months ago, and really I haven't looked at it.
Yes. I never really read it, but I signed it because we were in a big hurry to get started.
And of course, somebody in my company read it, or my attorney read it, right?
Well, this is what the guy who gave me the agreement, this is what he told me it was going to say. And then when they read it, they'll often say, I don't think it says that.
What kind of an agreement? Like a vendor agreement?
Well, sure. It can be as simple as something, and here's the one that'll snag you quite often, is a uniform agreement. Let's say you have employees and you want a uniform approach, let's say a small restaurant. So you sign an agreement with a uniform company to provide you clean uniforms because you don't want to be able to trust your employees to come in clean and sparkling every day. You read those agreements, and what you're going to find out is it's likely to be what they call an evergreen contract, which means it renews automatically unless you've terminated it in certain methods 6 months before it ends.
Whoa.
That's an example.
That's a good example, because there's an awful lot of people that have contracts with Cintas and among other uniform companies, which are all good companies, but the contract is a contract, and you got to understand it before you get into it.
That's exactly right. And the penalties to terminate, if they truly did take the time to write what's referred to as an evergreen contract, the penalty to get out of it is significant. So typically you don't get out of it because it's more costly to get out than to just stay in and bear with it.
What other kind of contract? I think the idea of I never thought of a uniform contract. I'd never thought of that.
Well, lease agreements are a great example as well. Because if you have a business, likely you're renting space, you used your basement or garage for a period of time, but you're going to rent space. And, more often than not, you'll rent space from someone you know. I mean, how else are you going to find space? You look to the people you know and hang with or are familiar to you, and you say, who's got space? And, well, a friend of mine has space. And they'll say, well, this is the standard lease we've used for years and years, but here, and you agree to terms, but you don't look at the contract itself to see if the terms you've just agreed to verbally are actually in the document. And that's unless it's in the document, it doesn't exist.